This is VOA Africa.
Hello, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Monday, October 12th. This is Africa 54. Due to the global outbreak of COVID-19, Voice of America is taking every necessary precaution to safeguard its employees. So our broadcast will look a little different today and in the near future as we, out of an abundance of caution, reduce our staffing at VOA headquarters here in Washington. We're working to help keep you informed about what's going on, and we appreciate you staying with us on Africa 54. We begin our newscast with a heartwarming but sad story of a man who has experienced more than most in his long life playing for South Africa's blacks-only rugby team, surviving a battle with coronavirus and the tragic death of his son to COVID-19. Joe Davis has our story.
Broadhurst Cona has experienced some challenging times in his life. Decades ago, the South African was a talented rugby player. These were the days of apartheid, and he was only able to play for South Africa's blacks-only team. More recently, he suffered badly with a coronavirus infection. In hospital one night, Cona got up and, against the nurse's wishes, began doing vigorous exercise.
It was painful. Then I said to myself, my chest was like it's going to implode. Then I said to myself, no, it's okay, let me go on. I'll rather die exercising instead of sleeping. And then I did that for 2 days. On the third day, I was a healthy man.
Cona discovered rugby by accident after the South African government bulldozed his family home. He was a teenager when his family, who lived in the picturesque seaside Simonstown, were uprooted and moved to Goodluck.
That forced removal was implemented to remove all the black people out of urban areas. Yeah, and then we were dumped in Gugulethu because they wanted to keep the town lily white.
There was no rugby team in Simonstown, but in Gugulethu, a rugby coach and a soccer team he was playing against noticed his stocky build, pace and strength. A successful international career followed, but it wasn't until the year 2000 that Cona finally received what he'd long been denied, the coveted green and gold blazer of the team that had for decades been the realm of the white players alone, the Springboks. His rugby past caught up with him while he was in hospital with coronavirus. He realised he'd played against the man in the bed next to him, who was part of a rival black neighbourhood team. Sadly, his fellow patient and former rival didn't make it.
What made me more desperate now to fight was when I saw one of the guys who was sleeping next to me. He passed on, I could see he was struggling, breathing. And then in the morning, I saw those DNA staff came and they sanitized his bed and all that, and the guy was there. Only to find it's a guy whom I knew I played rugby with.
Cona, though, suffered the cruelest of blows after recovering from coronavirus. His son Morgan caught the disease and died a short time later.
That was Reuters' Joe Davis with that report. The World Bank says the coronavirus crisis is expected to drive a 3.3% contraction in sub-Saharan African economies in 2020 and could push 40 million people into extreme poverty. Olivia Chan has more.
The global health crisis is expected to drive a 3.3% contraction in sub-Saharan African economies in 2020. That's according to the World Bank. It says the downturn could push 40 million people into extreme poverty. Even though the region appears to have so far escaped the worst of the health crisis, the Washington-based lender warned of the potential risks. The World Bank said the disruption in the tourism industry and lockdowns will cause substantial slowdowns in Ethiopia, Kenya, and the region's island nations. Economies which are not overly reliant on commodities, like Ivory Coast, Ghana, and Senegal, will be spared steep contractions. That's thanks to fairly robust outputs in their farming sectors. The World Bank says governments in the region should take steps to boost their capacity to rebound from the impact of the crisis. It expects growth to recover in 2021, with economies growing by 2.1%, though that would still be below the levels seen in 2019.
Olivia Chan of Reuters with that report. A delegation from the Economic Community of West African States met Sunday in Bamako with Malian officials to assess that country's transitional process. The delegation was led by Ghanaian President and current ECOWAS Chair Nana Akufo-Addo. Also part of the mission was former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan, who is an ECOWAS special envoy and mediator on the Malian crisis. Ibrahima Kane, a Senegalese human rights activist and political analyst, says the delegation expressed satisfaction with the progress made so far in the transition process, including the release of prisoners and approval of the transition agreement. Ghana has started building sea defense walls at key points along the coast to stop coastal erosion and protect beaches, communities, and historic buildings. But fishermen fear the walls will block them from pulling their nets ashore, and coastal resorts say they are harming business. Stacey Knott has this story from Cape Coast, Ghana.
When Ben Iden set up a resort in the coastal town Elmina, he imagined people flocking to its golden beach. But since the resort opened in 2009, he has spent much of his time battling rapid beach erosion, which he blames on years of illegal sand mining. Authorities took steps that decreased the mining and built a rocky seawall in 2017 to stop further erosion. But now, Iden says hotel guests cannot access the water.
I think that Ghana's tourism potential is really what is at risk. And when I've looked at any promotion which talks about Ghana, one of the things that we always raise, apart from heritage, is our beautiful beachfronts. And I really think that we've got to start putting some effort and some investment behind ensuring, protecting, and improving our beachfronts. And they could start right here.
Ghana has an average erosion rate of about 2 metres a year, with some smaller sites seeing up to 17 metres of erosion in 1 year, says Dr. Donatus Anyurung of the University of Cape Coast Centre for Coastal Management. In response, the government is building more sea defence walls along its coast. While some of the walls allow beach access, there are concerns about the walls' impact and effectiveness. Some experts say other methods are better in the long run.
We can consider some soft solution like vegetation, mangroves, or just nourishment with sand. We can mix solutions, and we can have our beaches and even have gardens and proper recreational areas.
Some communities in the central region campaigned for the seawalls, but fishermen fear they will have an impact on their livelihoods.
It will disturb us, and all of the time when we are pulling the nets, our minds go there. Because that's the work that we do here. We don't have any work. We do only the sea work that we do.
Ghana's Central Region Minister Kwamena Duncan worries about the impact of climate change on sea levels. He says the seawalls allow for the needs of fishermen and will protect livelihoods.
I think the broad objective is to protect the townships, and the hotels themselves are not far removed from where the towns are. And it cannot also be done just at one point, and some places are left. So if that happened, then somehow the whole objective is defeated.
Duncan said he hopes hotels and communities along the coast will adapt to the walls, as Ghana itself must continue adapting to the changing climate. Stacey Knott for VOA News, Cape Coast.
A once-in-a-decade ceremony to transform thousands of Maasai Moran or warriors into mzee or elders recently took place in Kenya, where an estimated 3,000 bulls and 30,000 goats and sheep were slaughtered. Here is Reuters' David Doyle.
Thousands of Maasai have gathered at a site in Kenya for a once-in-a-decade ceremony that transforms them from Moran or warriors into mzee or elders. Around 15,000 men aged between 25 and 40 congregated at the Maparasha Hills in Kajiado County to feast on an estimated 3,000 bulls and 30,000 goats and sheep.
I am very happy because I have got to an age where I can solve the responsibilities of the Maasai as an elder and therefore appreciate it, and I am very happy.
They were also joined by their wives who sang songs praising and encouraging the incoming group of elders. The ceremony had been due to take place earlier in the year, but like many other public events, had to be postponed. There are an estimated 1.2 million Maasai in Kenya, and those at the 5-day-long ceremony have also come from neighbouring Tanzania.
That was Reuters' David Doyle with that report. We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered during the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, a group of young women in Pakistan worked to beat the odds and change the culture around them. We'll be right back.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linoch Mudu, in Washington, every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
Do you view politics from the left or the right? How did directions get connected to political beliefs? In the beginning, it described where lawmakers sat. After the Revolution of 1789, the French National Assembly argued over a new constitution. Anti-royalist revolutionaries disagreed with conservative, aristocratic supporters of the monarchy. They arranged themselves in groups inside the assembly chamber. Revolutionaries on the left side of the presiding officer, conservatives on the right. The seating arrangement continued on and off over the years. But by the mid-1800s, journalists were using left and right as shorthand to describe political viewpoints. The practice continues to this day. Far left and far right depict political extremes. Centrists are moderates who take positions in the middle.
Welcome back to Africa 54. U.S. President Donald Trump says he's ready to return to the campaign trail after his recent COVID-19 diagnosis. Former Vice President Joe Biden is heading to Ohio this week to press his case for a White House win come November 3rd. Meanwhile, the U.S. Senate begins confirmation hearings on Amy Coney Barrett, Trump's nominee for the vacancy on the Supreme Court. Michelle Quinn reports.
First of all, I'm feeling great. I don't know about you. How's everyone feeling?
With just 3 weeks left before Election Day, President Donald Trump said he's ready to get back on the campaign trail after recovering from COVID-19. His doctor released a statement Sunday saying the Republican president is no longer considered a transmission risk. But a presidential candidate debate scheduled for this week isn't happening. Trump pulled out of a planned virtual debate with former Vice President Joe Biden, a Democrat.
That's how debates have been handled in America for the last 200 years. You've stood there and you've debated somebody. And my father doesn't want to do it over a glorified conference call. He wants to stand on the stage, look somebody in the eyes, and Biden's not willing to do that.
The Biden campaign says its candidate looks forward to debating Trump in person on October 22nd, as long as the president is free of the infection and follows health protocols. Although Biden leads Trump by as many as 12 percentage points in a recent national poll of likely voters, both candidates are heading to so-called battleground states, key states that could decide the election. This week, Trump is scheduled to go to Florida for a rally and then Pennsylvania. Biden will be in Ohio. People have started voting in many states. Turnout appears high in Wisconsin, a battleground state, where in Dane County, a Democratic stronghold, the number of submitted ballots is already more than 36% of the county's total 2016 election vote, the New York Times reported. The Biden campaign is telling people to vote early and in person in states that allow them to do so.
We're telling people to take advantage of early vote in person. And remember, look, I'm on the ballot. New Orleans and Louisiana started early voting yesterday, and I'm encouraging people to take advantage of the voting process. Early vote in person is a great way to do it. It reduces lines on Election Day.
While the campaigns drive home their messages, the Senate begins confirmation hearings this week on Amy Coney Barrett to become the next justice on the U.S. Supreme Court. The hearing will provide another stage for discussions of the country's future. If confirmed, Barrett will replace Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who died in September. Michelle Quinn, VOA News.
President Donald Trump says he will not participate in a virtual debate, leaving the status of the rest of the debates in limbo. VOA Steve Reddish brings us up to date.
Could the vice presidential debate have been the final debate of 2020?
I think there will be another debate.
Halfway through the 4 scheduled debates, the quadrennial campaign ritual is on hold. After President Donald Trump's COVID diagnosis, the Commission on Presidential Debates announced the next presidential debate on Thursday, October 15th, planned as a town hall event with undecided voters asking their questions, would be held virtually for pandemic safety reasons.
If we could go forward with a virtual town hall, I think it would be so symbolic, emblematic of what the nation is doing.
President Trump told Fox Business News he was not going to waste his time on a virtual debate, calling it ridiculous.
If it's on Zoom and his mic is cut, then he can raise his voice and keep speaking as much as possible, but it is technologically possible to silence him. And in any face-to-face context, you could cut his mic, but if he's speaking up, it's going to be picked up by Biden's mic.
The announcement of a virtual debate and President Trump's dismissal of it came less than 12 hours after Vice President Mike Pence and Senator Kamala Harris met in the year's only vice presidential debate.
So did Pence kind of bolster Trump's appeal and what Trump has been saying about these various issues? And did Harris project a consistent message, a message that was consistent with Biden? Yes, they both absolutely did that.
There were 2 starkly different narratives developed by these 2 candidates. One is, boy, these 4 years have been, wonderful under the leadership of Donald Trump, and if not for Donald Trump, it would just be much worse. And all of the great things, even on the coronavirus, and then of course, her prosecuting the record of. At one point, what did she say on the coronavirus? This is the worst debacle in the history of the presidency, and doesn't deserve 4 more years. So we had those 2 contrasting images of narratives.
Analysts saw a recurring theme from the debate performances of Trump and Pence. ignoring the moderator and breaking rules.
But as we got into the debate, he made it clear that he thought that it was his role to decide how long he spoke, when he spoke, what he spoke about. So he wrested authority that had been rooted in the moderator, who happened to be a woman moderating this debate.
Senator Harris.
And in fact, as the debate went on, he took the initiative to try to get Senator Harris to answer his questions that had not been posed by the moderator. So he made it very clear that he thought that it was his role to be the authoritative presence in that debate.
I do think that maybe Mike Pence took advantage in a way of, okay, I'm winning this battle. I'm ignoring the rules. I'm breaking the rules.
I did not create the rules for tonight.
She's kind of pleaded with me. I'm just going to continue doing it. And then she sort of, after a while, just sort of gave it up.
The scheduled town hall debate on October 15th will not take place. Former Vice President Joe Biden has already scheduled a televised event that night, taking questions from voters. President Trump has indicated he wants to hold a live event that evening as well. The final presidential debate is scheduled for October 22nd in Nashville, Tennessee. The Trump campaign is pressing for another debate on October 29th. Steve Reddish, VOA News, Washington.
America's allies in Europe are watching closely as the U.S. presidential election enters its final stretch. Transatlantic relations have at times been strained under President Donald Trump, and some key European allies hope for a return to more stability under a Joe Biden presidency. But other NATO members have welcomed Trump's demands for Europe to pull its weight. Henry Ridgwell has more from London.
Shortly after his 2016 election victory, President Donald Trump declared that NATO was obsolete because, in his words, it wasn't taking care of terror. That alarmed NATO allies, shaken by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But by 2017, Trump's tone had changed.
Now they do fight terrorism. I said it was obsolete. It's no longer obsolete.
For Europe, the unpredictability has been difficult, says security analyst Julie Norman.
You want an ally who's going to be reliable, and especially an ally like the United States that traditionally has been, such a heavyweight.
So what do NATO allies make of Trump's rival, Joe Biden?
Biden, from his past record, is much more favourable to NATO, and NATO remains the bedrock of British security as well as European security more generally.
Supporters of Donald Trump say he should be judged on his actions. The president oversaw the deployment of US troops and hardware to Poland in 2017 as part of NATO's biggest deployment since the Cold War. He remains a popular figure in Poland and other former Soviet states.
For some of those states, there would still probably be a preference for Trump to stay in the White House.
But in Germany's case, a major European ally, Trump has accused Berlin of being delinquent in its NATO payments and plans to withdraw 20,000 troops stationed in the country. While his tone is abrasive, the president tells truths that Europe doesn't want to hear, argues political commentator Matthew Parris.
He has in an instinctive way but been right about quite a few things, that perhaps there was a need to push back against China on trade issues. He's right about NATO spending. He's right about many European countries not pulling their weight.
Washington's tough stance on China may not change whoever wins the White House, says analyst Julie Norman.
Many Democrats, Biden included, share some of the concerns that Trump had around China and that many Europeans have around China as well.
The biggest transatlantic divergence during the Trump administration has been on climate change, with many in Europe seeing Biden as more sympathetic to their viewpoint, says analyst Leslie Vinjamuri.
I think it's very clear to Europe that the stakes could not be higher in this elections for what is arguably the most important issue at the international level over the next 10 and 15 years.
From Russia to conflicts in Libya and the Middle East, to tensions with Turkey. Europe faces numerous strategic challenges. The US will likely play a key role, no matter who wins the presidential election in November. Henry Ridgwell for VOA News, London.
The International Day of the Girl Child was celebrated on Sunday with the theme, My Voice, Our Equal Future. And for 2 years, a group of dedicated young women in a conservative neighborhood of Karachi has been working to beat the odds and change the culture around them. The women are doing it by cycling. VOA's Ayesha Tanzim reports from Pakistan's largest city, Karachi.
Riding a bicycle sounds like a very ordinary activity in many parts of the world. Not here, and not for these girls. This is Liari, a conservative neighborhood in Pakistan's largest city, Karachi. Women here are mostly absent from public life. So when a Germany-sponsored NGO called Liari Girls Cafe helped a group of young girls learn how to ride a bicycle, locals were shocked. Initially, the resistance was strong. People would pass foul comments. Some local madrasas even sent young students to throw stones at them.
Sometimes the criticism was so harsh that we felt disturbed and mentally tortured, but we did not give up and continued our journey.
Every Sunday, these girls pick up their bikes and take them to an empty parking lot to practice. For them, it is more than a simple sport. It is a form of activism.
I belong to an area where girls are often suppressed. I did not want my daughters to go through what I went through as a child. I started cycling myself so I can bring my daughters with me.
Not a single one of these young women owns a bike. The 30 bikes they share among themselves have been mostly donated by local authorities or the German consulate in Karachi. Ultimately, these girls are hoping to change attitudes. They want cycling to become normal for females. They want to be able to do it in their daily lives, to go to school or to work. Their hopes for the future are high, but for now, this stretch of road, empty on a Sunday morning, is the only space they have to express their passion. Aisha Tanzim, VOA News, Karachi.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thank you for watching.